Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. The election is now just 25 days away, and Donald Trump is very clearly planning to run the same playbook from last time. We are watching a slow-motion insurrection. In these final weeks of the campaign, Trump and his allies are laying all the groundwork, getting ready to reject the free and fair result of this election if he does not win. That's plain as day. We all know it, right? Today, J.D. Vance said he would help his running mate in another coup attempt, after refusing to acknowledge that Trump actually lost in 2020 over and over again.
Do you believe he lost the 2020 election?
I think that Donald Trump and I have both raised a number of issues with the 2020 election, but we're focused on the future. I think there's an obsession here with focusing on 2020. I'm much more worried about what happened after 2020, which is a wide open border, groceries that are unaffordable. And look,
Senator, yes or no?
Okay.
Did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election?
Let me ask you a question. Is it okay that big technology companies censored the Hunter Biden laptop story, which independent analysis have said it cost Donald Trump millions of votes?
Senator Vance, I'm going to ask you again. Did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election?
Did big technology companies censor a story that independent studies have suggested would have cost Trump millions of votes?
Senator
I think that's
Vance,
the question.
I'm going to ask you again. Did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election?
And I've answered your question with another question. You answer my question and I'll answer yours.
Senator, would you have certified the election in 2020? Yes or no?
I've said that I would have voted against certification because of the concern that I just raised. I think that when you have technology companies...
The answer is no.
Now, to some degree, perpetuating the 2020 lie is about protecting Donald Trump's fragile ego. And J.D. Vance, as his eager crony, right, has to make sure, like, the big guy doesn't get upset. But also, more seriously, we have to take J.D. Vance and Trump seriously. Every day, they're telling us how they're approaching this, right? They're openly plotting to steal this election. Because while we may be used to the lies and the anti-democratic rhetoric after so many years, and in some ways we just are heading towards a very dangerous and precarious moment. And I know I'm not saying anything new or earth-shattering or like wildly insightful by saying that, but it must be said. 25 days out. So next month, we're going to find out, election night, night after, week after, who won, right? If Kamala Harris has won 270 electoral votes. Now, that will not actually be enough for her to be sworn in as the next president. And here's the rub. In years past, it was. In 2004 and 2012, and other elections I've covered in 2016. But what is going to happen is that our democratic system will be existentially challenged once again as Donald Trump attempts to do what he did in 2020. Everybody knows this. This time, he will have a much bigger running start, as well as the backing of the Republican Party, a whole group of right-wing lawyers, and possibly, as we saw on January 6th, violent mobs. It's just the reality. It's not a question if it's going to happen. Like, if Donald Trump and J.D. Vance are going to come out and be like, well, we conceded defeat, we called Kamala Harris. No. Again, Trump and his running mate have told us over and over again they will not accept defeat. The people who work closely with him agree. General Mark Milley, this is Trump's chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. This is a pretty serious dude. His top general worked with Trump, was in the room with him, says Trump is, quote, a fascist to the core. Not my assessment. A fascist to the core, and the most dangerous person in the country. That's who we're dealing with. And Trump's allies are already taking action. Republicans are attempting to seed the ground for a legal battle, filing election-related lawsuits all over the country. According to Democracy Docket, a voting rights news platform that tracks election litigation, the Republican Party has been involved in 97 lawsuits so far this election cycle. That's more than 3 times the number we saw ahead of the 2020 election, which, again, was in the midst of COVID, where there was a lot more actually happening on the ground, like states having to change stuff around. The New York Times notes the lawsuits are concentrated in swing states and key counties likely to determine the race. Several of the suits embrace debunk theories about voter fraud and so-called stolen elections that Trump has promoted since 2020. In the 3rd largest county in Pennsylvania, the state that may be the tipping point in the election, the Republican Party is seeking to force local officials to count ballots by hand, evoking debunked conspiracy theories about corrupted voting machines. In the swing state of Nevada, the Republican National Committee falsely claims in a new suit that nearly 4,000 non-citizens voted in 2020. That's obviously nonsense. This week, the RNC filed a lawsuit in Michigan challenging the ability of certain voters who live overseas but are U.S. citizens to cast a ballot in the battleground state. Now, the only answer to this attempt to undo the republic, to finish what they started on January 6th, is to work like hell to preserve democracy through democratic means. Democrats in the Harris campaign have to run hard. They have to persuade people. They have to use rhetoric and logic and reason, right? And emotion to win more votes in swing states. And they've got to fight back in the courts. And as we saw last time, it may come down to having enough people with integrity who are Republicans, nominally in key positions at key moments. And none of this is ideal or even really fair, but it's the reality of the situation. It's weird not to call it out all the time. Like we're just having, oh, so-and-so's running an ad. They're doing these campaign events. They're having, Even though we all lived through Donald Trump's first attempted coup, the one he was never held for account for, there is something surreal about watching it happen again right now in front of our faces. Ian Bassin is co-founder and executive director of Protect Democracy. Fernita Tolson is an election law expert and professor at the University of Southern California School of Law. She's co-host of the Free and Fair podcast, and they join me now. Professor, let me start with you on the election landscape. One of the things that's interesting with these lawsuits, the one that I mentioned, for instance, in Nevada, saying that 4,000 non-citizens have voted. Like, that's nonsense, obviously. The suit has nowhere to go. But some folks make the argument, and I think the folks at Democracy Docket have said that there's zombie lawsuits, that basically they exist to wrap a talking point in a legal filing so that after the election, if they lose Nevada, they can say, we've got thousands of non-citizen voters. Look, we filed a suit beforehand. That it's essentially a kind of big lie seeding through legal means. What do you think of that theory?
So first, Chris, thank you for having me on the show. Yeah, that is it's incredibly plausible that these lawsuits are being brought in order to lay the groundwork for challenges post-election. But let's take a step back. I think that we have to look at the pre-Trump years, which really validated this notion that fraud exists, right? So in 2008, when the U.S. Supreme Court allowed states to pass laws to address fraud, even if they didn't have any evidence that fraud existed, well, that was our introduction to this idea that, well, fraud might exist. We just don't know if it exists or not. So we're just going to assume it exists. And so in some ways, Trump did not introduce this. 2020 did not introduce this. This has been almost 15 years of a slow move towards legitimizing fraud in our system, even though we don't have any proof of widespread fraud. So one of the reasons I want to make this point is because I don't want people to assume that even if Kamala Harris wins next month, that this goes away, right? This has been building before Trump, and it will exist after Trump, and it will be used to further more voting restrictions, even if we get past this election cycle.
Ian, let me play for you what the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, said was a similar answer to J.D. Vance. And I want to get your sense of the import of this. Again, at one level, it's about Trump's ego, but it seems deeper to me, particularly when you're talking about people that will be in key roles. This is Mike Johnson being asked by George Stephanopoulos the same question about the outcome of the 2020 election.
Can you say unequivocally that Joe Biden won the 2020 election and Donald Trump lost?
See, this is the game that is always played by mainstream media with leading Republicans. It's a gotcha game.
Now, Johnson followed that up by saying his worries about the 2024 election, the professor's point that thousands upon thousands of non-citizens will be voting. This seems like the line they are hitting ahead of the time so they could use it to overturn the results.
Yeah, I mean, they've got a strategy here of the 3 Ds: deceive, disrupt, and deny. The plan is to deceive people before the election with all of these false narratives and scurrilous accusations that don't have any grounding in reality. And then when election time comes around, election day, and now we're in early voting, disrupt with aggressive poll monitoring, with frivolous lawsuits, with what they did in 2022, with people trying to interfere with drop boxes, and then to deny. Right, as you noted, after the election, to be able to say, see, there was all this evidence of problems, and therefore we're going to deny the result if we lose. The term you referenced earlier, zombie lawsuits, that my colleague Ben Berwick coined about these lawsuits that are seeds, as you said, planted today, that could give them the opportunity after the election to deny the results. And I think the thing you're pointing out now about J.D. Vance and Mike Johnson is that unlike in 2020, Trump now has stocked people around him and created a Republican Party that is fully on board. He still had 147 votes in the Republican Party last time. He has even more this time because he's gotten rid of anybody who would stand in his way. And I think this poses the very danger that General Milley alluded to. And I want to point out, Chris, something that you just flagged on the screen. General Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs under Trump, called him a fascist to the core. And you put up on the screen a news article reporting it from The Independent, a newspaper out of England. The other newspaper that has covered it so far is The Guardian out of England. Where is the American press putting this on banner headlines tomorrow? I mean, it's as if a doctor called your house to tell you you had a fatal heart condition and needed emergency surgery, and the person taking the message wrote it on a Post-it and buried it in some paperwork under the phone. No, if you get that message, you find the person who needs the surgery, you grab them by the collar, and you slap the Post-it on their forehead. And that's what the media needs to do for the days and weeks ahead to warn the American people.